Remember on Thursday we were talking about the government's U-turn and then another U-turn on gay conversion therapy. Well, a consequence of that has meant that more than 100 organisations have pulled out of the UK's first ever global LGBT plus conference. The government had promised to ban conversion therapy, but last week decided not to, including therapy for transgender people in the ban. However, they've now decided that they will do it, but not for transgender people. Now, they justify that on the basis that some children might be undergoing gender dysphoria, and therefore they would need to talk to some kind of therapist, maybe. And under the current legislation, that might be banned. So they've decided to take trans people out of the initial draft bill, which they still say they're going to put in the Queen's Speech. Well, Paul Roberts is Chief Executive of LGBT Consortium, one of the charities to withdraw support for the conference. Paul, very good evening. Now, this is quite a big thing. If 100 organisations have withdrawn, are you expecting the government now to cancel the conference?
Hi, Ian. Thanks for having me on. I think it puts the conference in a really precarious position. And actually, I was just checking our latest update, and there's over 120 organisations now, coupled with those that THT have been pulling together. So that's nearly 150 organisations already, increasing by the minute, it appears, with the pinging that's going on from my inbox.
Do you have any sympathy with the... I mean, OK, they made the... Well, it was leaked. It wasn't actually a decision. Paul Brand got the story saying that they were going to withdraw it from the Queen's Speech because of lack of parliamentary time. Whatever the real reason was, we can all speculate. And then 3 hours later, they did another U-turn and said, well, we are going to do this, but it will not be for trans people. It will just be for lesbian and gay people. Now, do you understand their argument that there are legal hurdles to overcome for trans people? I think that today they've said, well, we do intend to do this, but we've got to get it right. And at the moment, we're not sure that we have.
I think we need to kind of pull apart two really key things here. One thing is around conversion practice, which has a predetermined outcome of trying to change somebody's identity, whereas affirmative therapy is going into a situation with the opportunity to explore somebody's identity, but doesn't start with that predetermined outcome. So therefore, a young person needing to explore their own gender dysphoria would be affirmative therapy. If you look
but how do you define that legally? That's the problem they've got, isn't it?
I think we have to look at other countries that have done it really, really successfully. There are plenty of countries around the world that have implemented an inclusive ban on conversion practices. And I think we could emulate some of that legislation from countries like France, like Canada, who have done it really simply, and has been shown that it hasn't been abused, and we could implement it also in England and Wales, because of course Scotland has its own proposed legislation. So is it really helpful, though, to withdraw from this conference? Surely that would be a good opportunity to put views forward. So I think we, as a sector, it's been portrayed or perceived that we are a divided sector, that LGBT plus organisations have differing views on this. And I think today has shown unequivocally that we are as one, as an LGBT plus sector. Every single organisation I have spoken to today has said, of course we support this action. Of course we would rather not be having to pull out of an international LGBT conference. It would have been the first international LGBT conference our government was hosting, and we would love nothing else to be able to be in a position where we as the UK are leading on LGBT global rights, but unfortunately we're not in that situation, and so we have to take this stand as a sector and stand as one. A ban that doesn't include trans people isn't a ban. There will be loopholes that people would find, and we can't stand by and accept that, and we stand in solidarity with our trans siblings to ensure that any ban on conversion practices is a complete and inclusive ban.
Let me just read you a tweet. I don't know if you've seen it from Jamie Wallace, the Conservative MP that came out as trans. Was it last week or the week? But no, it was last week, wasn't it?
Last week.
He says, I'm bitterly disappointed at the government's decision not to include gender identity in the ban on conversion therapy. Many have asked what my thoughts are. I've always believed that this debate attracts unnecessary hysteria and toxicity, and meaningful results can only come from meaningful debate. Understandably, concerns need to be looked at and debated, but it is wrong to exclude protections for a whole group of people from a practice described as abhorrent. I hope the announcement that a separate piece of work will now be done on this issue will be done at speed. If the conversion therapy ban passes through Parliament without any protections for the transgender community, it cannot be described as anything other than a broken promise. I imagine you say hear, hear to all of that.
Absolutely. And I think what's shown today, we as a sector have resoundingly said we must have an inclusive ban. Professional bodies, physical and mental health bodies have already, for a long time, under a memorandum of understanding, been saying that they support an inclusive ban. And even today, we saw many faith leaders and organisations coming out in favour of an inclusive ban. A ban without including trans people is not a ban on conversion practices.
Okay. Paul, thank you for joining us. That's Paul Roberts, Chief Executive of the LGBT Consortium.